Hello, viewers. I'm Dr. Farhan here. Welcome to Doctor's Health Talk Show. I am today, I have the pleasure to have the company of one of our class fellows, Farwa Rizvi, who's joining me from Melbourne, Australia. Hi, Farwa, how are you?
Thank you, Farhan. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. So good to see you. I would like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time. I know you are extremely busy with a lot of responsibilities related to COVID, but also as you're a PhD candidate and almost at the end of your research and thesis. So thank you for taking this time. I am sure a lot of our class fellows have been looking forward to this day. So with that, I would like to share with our viewers that you are actually a public health consultant, and
Yes.
it's something new for us, for our class fellows. So I would like to take you back to our years in medical school and start the journey of your life from there. So,
Okay.
graduated in 1999. Tell me a little bit about your life for that. Are you from Rawalpindi or Islamabad, and how did you choose Rawalpindi Medical College?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Farhan. So you're asking me to start the journey from the very beginning. I First of all, I wasn't really interested in going particularly into medicine back when I was in class ninth and 10th. Um, but I definitely had a love for research and biology and genetics and all of that. And I think I got great marks in year 10. I did it from Pakistan Air Force Chaklala School. Um, then my first year, my year 11, I had a pre-med. And at that time, I thought, okay, if I'm going to be in Pakistan, I need to have a really nice degree, a solid degree. And in my head, as a 16-year-old, it never occurred to me that medicine, MBBS itself was just the end of it all. For me, it was always a stepping stone for doing something different, for advancing, my career. So yeah, that was the deciding moment when I, decided that I'm going to go into medicine. Having said that, RMC was always the first choice. My parents are originally from Lahore, but I've always been in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. Never could associate for the places, the great places in Lahore. I'd always been a tourist there, despite my family being there. My parents were never posted there. They were in army, so we got posted around a lot. By the time, Farhan, I came to RMC, I can tell you that I changed 11 schools, 11 institutes. So we were like
You are pretty
global.
adaptable, that's for sure.
I
Yeah.
think that was one thing that we did learn through hook or crook. But I looked at my parents, my mom, she was very adaptable. There were times when we had to go to a school for 6 months only and then go to another place. I started my early schooling from Germany. So there was a time when I was just speaking German language and a bit of Urdu. And then we had to come back to Pakistan as a young child. And it was quite a period for me because I had to relearn English language and focus on that. So that's been a journey.
I
But
tell you that you probably, your gray matter, your brain is much more stronger than all of us because I've heard and read that people who can shift between languages, it actually creates stronger bonds in the brain. So from that, we can tell you that that was the beginning of a researcher, a scientist that was brewing in you as from the childhood. So I guess tell us, take us at the end of the medical school.
sure.
If you would share with us, what did you do right after the medical school?
So yeah, after the medical school, and I should mention it here that I was interested in research. I did a bit of research projects back in third year in RMC. There was this international conference happening for epidemiology, and I remember it was Professor Charles Keith or somebody who had come from Australia for this research methodology workshop, a week long. I was fortunate enough to be a part of it. And I think I developed my love for that, for epidemiology from there. It was always clinical based. And then I moved on, did another project with Professor Yasmin Rashid in final year. And I think that was, they were just baby steps for me to go towards research at that time. I did my clerkship, the house job in medicine, 6 months, in Forgy Foundation Hospital, and 6 months of ENT surgery, actually, in the BBH. Because there was a time when I was thinking of going into ENT surgery. During my rotation, I was conducting surgeries myself, and it was a pretty cool experience. But I think, you think of something and then things change for a good reason, I'd like to think. I got engaged right after my final year. So my husband, Ali, and we got married right after the house job, 1 week after that. So it was a lot of things happening at many fronts in a good way. So I worked at a private medical college as a demonstrator right away after my house job, I got married, had my baby in 2002, Mariam. I think I wanted to take some time off, almost for a couple of months. And then I started work at the private medical college, kept on working as the clinical officer as well, because I wanted to be in touch with both the fields. And for me, it was that time when I was thinking whether I really wanted to go into public health and make a career out of it. So by 2005, I went for my master's in public health, the MPH from University of Health Sciences. And I started my internship at the National Institute of Population Sciences. Then I went on to work as a research officer at Population Council. That's the international organization, a US-based one, which works for a lot of different projects, especially women's health and that sort of thing. And I think I was always naturally gravitated working towards women's health and the accessibility issues, reproductive health. For me, the first turning point in my career happened when I shifted from Population Council and I went to work as a senior epidemiologist at the CPSP, that's the College of Physicians and Surgeons, Pakistan. I worked there for 2 years. I was looking at the research work, the synopsis, dissertation of different doctors, postgrad doctors who were working in the respective clinical fields. And I was working as the epidemiologist there. And then finally, the second shift in my career happened when I shifted from CPSP to Bahia University Private Medical College, IMDC. That was Islamabad Medical Dental College. That was back in 2009. When I made the move, my second daughter was 6-7 months old. So that was a huge move for me, but I was happy because I started to work in public health and in research, collaborative projects and everything. And it was a big change for me, but in a positive way.
I'm very impressed by that. Actually, there were so much to explore in public health arena in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Most of us who stayed with medicine, we have no idea. So it's a very informative that these were the things even happening at that time. What was the quality of work like at CPSP, the research or epidemiology? Now looking back, what do you think?
Yeah, I think like we're talking about 2006, 7, 8. The idea of epidemiology was gaining more interest. It was definitely generating interest, but there weren't a lot of good epidemiologists around, not a lot of good public health people around at the time, but I'm glad that it had started to take the pivotal position because all the clinical doctors, they were exposed to all that research work during their tenure for their postgrad degrees like FCPAs. So I'm happy to say that the importance of public health, research methodology and epidemiology was definitely recognized at that time. But definitely there was a lot of room for quality because, you need more people, you need more specialists in order to, it's an ongoing process. And when you introduce a subject, you need to have the evaluation, a robust implementation and evaluation, and then make changes. So yes, if you can ask me, was there room for improvement? There is, there always is in any specialty. And if you look at public health, um, this field is definitely a baby considered to all the other clinical medicine. And we're talking about a conglomeration of public health and the clinical side of it. So I've always identified myself as a physician and a public health specialist. So to marry each of these two subjects together was something that I had to strive for, but I'm happy it happened that way.
So let me ask you, what was your experience and where were you teaching medical students at the Islamabad Medical and Dental College? Did we, I'm gonna frankly ask you, I don't really remember much about community health, I think, or community medicine.
Yes, it's still called community medicine in Pakistan.
So so was there a public health department that the medical students had to go through in their training?
Yes, that's actually a really good question, Farhan. So I joined the private medical college in 2009 as an assistant professor when I made the move from CPSP there. Yes, there was a full-fledged public health department. There is, which is called the Department of Community Medicine. By the time I was working there, public health, the PBL, problem-based learning and everything, the whole field of medical education had started to change. The narrative was changing, it was gaining more popularity, and that was a beautiful time to introduce different changes. So I'm happy that I was a part of that change at that time. We had the integrative public health and epidemiology teaching curriculum. So in our med school, we were introducing a couple of hours starting from first year. So, just initiating and sensitizing the students to the concept of public health, preventive medicine, regarding the clinical side of it, and then the epidemiology, the biostatistics. So it was sort of like a process from first year right up to fourth year, in which they actually had to work on their mini research projects, going to the community, finding out what could be the preventive side of, let's say, a tuberculosis program or, a polio health drive. So it was still integrated within the clinical side, but it was mostly the research methodology. So that was pretty good, actually. We definitely introduced a couple of workshops for the students, and then we started branching out. So I was working in collaboration with different clinicians who were my colleagues from different departments, from surgery, medicine, and gynae, to have different collab projects, and how could the colleagues, work on that together, and how could the students participate in that? Because the thing is, Farhan, in Pakistan, I still feel we need good people there for the medical teaching, for the research methodology, because that should be a part of the curriculum from the first year. And I still feel there's a lot of room for improvement there.
I'm realizing that there's a change coming because you are talking about this is relatively recent. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, you were in teaching in the Islamabad Medical Dental College, and things must have improved, continue to improve. So I have some questions on this topic, but we'll come back later. I want to get to your next journey. So 2015, up until then, you had become an associate professor in public health. You then came to Australia in 2016. So
14, sorry.
2014. 14. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what was that change like, and what were you looking to do?
Okay. So my family and I, we were already coming to Australia, to Melbourne, as we had family here. So every year we had those vacations here, coming for, 1 or 2 months with the children. So it was a very natural destination for us. Ali had his family here. I had my family here. So by the time I'd gotten promoted in 2013, by the end of that, and I think it was, I don't know, like third or fourth trip here, and I talked to my brother, and he said, "Why don't you guys settle here in Melbourne?" And I said to my husband that if I come here, I'm going to start my PhD, because in Pakistan, till now, we don't have the opportunity of having a good PhD program in public health or in epidemiology, a good robust program. And I thought, if I'm going to go for a PhD program, it's got to be something really good, and I want to, do the best. So that was my starting process, and then we just talked about it when we applied for our highly skilled residency program. I got my Australian residency within 3 months. Things were working out. But I think at that time, I just got promoted to the position of associate professor. And my husband was well settled. He was working in the real estate project in Islamabad. Perhaps you've heard of the Centaurus. So he actually, he raised the whole project. It was his baby. I think for Ali and myself, it was a difficult decision in the sense that we were already settled and we wanted to make that change. So for me, in my professional life, that was a third turning point.
Yeah.
And like I knew I'll have to leave it all, but we did that, and I'm really glad. We never looked back. I'm really happy. This is what we wanted. So Ali and we came over with the children back in 2014 for good. It's been 6 years here, so it's been a journey.
I have to say, I was looking at the pictures of that I will eventually share with our viewers, that you guys look like you have always been actually in Western countries, just the way how you guys carry yourself, because really impressive, because it's acclimatizing to a new culture, language. It's as I told you, your childhood travels, Germany, Pakistan, it has made you like the right person to actually make changes and feel home where you are. By talking to you, I feel like that you lived all your life in Australia, but I'm realizing that actually you came 6 years ago, or yeah. So that's interesting. So tell us a little bit about the search of an institution for PhD, and maybe you worked a little bit before that. How was that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Farhan. And yes, that's true. I think traveling so much during my childhood made a difference. It made us very adaptable and very resilient. So coming to Melbourne, my first priority was to get the children settled down, because my older one had just started year 7 and my younger one was starting her school year 1. So it was a huge change for us. But once we settled down in 3 or 4 months, I started looking at different universities, and I thought to myself, I need to have some sort of local experience before I actually start a major program. So I really got a very nice offer from Monash University in 2016, early 2016. And I worked there for a clinical trial, for a breast cancer clinical trial. As a clinical overseer, research associate for looking after all of those clinical patients, the research output. And I think, so in that 1 year, for me, it was a major step, because I got introduced to the clinical scenario here in Melbourne. It's quite different from Pakistan. And I also got introduced to different research techniques and methodologies, which were, again, it was a very steep learning curve for me. I was already working as a specialist back in Pakistan, and I realized that, things are a little bit different here. And I was happy to, imbibe all the changes and everything. I got to have the expertise of working on systematic reviews, Cochrane database, worked with 2 of my colleagues. I got published from Monash, actually. My first publication was back in 2008, when my daughter was just 1 week old. So that was my, it's very emotional for me. And my first publication from Monash was back in 2016, 17, from that trial that we were working on. It was a lot of learning for me, both as a clinician and as a researcher. So after that 1 year, I think that was good for me because it made me realize that I didn't just want to be a clinician. I still wanted to go towards public health. And I thought to myself, if I've got 40 patients, in this clinical trial, and I'm thinking of making a change by the results, how about if I've got 10,000 patients and I can actually push for a policy change? So for me, that was the one guiding principle that made me go towards a PhD degree, PhD extra program in public health. So that was when I started branching out, talking to different professors. You asked me how it started, sorry. So I started finding out supervisors, like every big university, in anywhere, they have this whole section in which they talk about, oh, these are the supervisors, they're looking for PhD candidates, these are the projects. If your proposal, your research proposal aligns with those supervisors' projects, then you talk to them, you meet them. So I started meeting them, something in reproductive health for women's health. And I got 2 offers from Monash and Deakin back in 2017. So that was, another story.
Wow. So PhD, it's tough. It's long and a lot of work. And um, tell us a little bit about that life now. How do you spend your days as a PhD student, mom, and all that stuff? So
Yeah. Um, First of all, Farhan, so I started my PhD extra program at Deakin in 2017, and it's a 3 to 3.5 years program. PhD is difficult because there is a steep learning curve in research, not only the research, but the administrative side of it. And I was telling you that earlier, the fact that you have to deal with 2 or 3 supervisors at the same time, you're working with them for 3 years. There's a lot of, like your personality should be matching their personality. That's a big fact. And you getting to know each other compared to the clinical clerkship where you work for 3 months and you move on. So this is different. This journey is different. It's not just the studies end of it. It's quite a journey. It's an emotional roller coaster ride. There are waves, there are great days when you feel that, oh, you publish or your paper is accepted, or you've got your data. And there are really bad days when you can't get your message across, or you can't really, convert those data into the variables that you wanted and the research output. So other than that, I would say that I loved every day of it. It's something beautiful if you're passionate about it. Also, it's made me evolve into somebody that I couldn't have imagined a couple of years back, both at the personal front, at the emotional side, and then at the research side.
yeah, I'm looking over some of the achievements in the last few years while you are a PhD student. You received a scholarship called RTP scholarship as a full-time domestic PhD student. Then you also went for a paper presentation in Singapore. You presented recently in France. And you have also written 2 booklets on epidemiology back in the days when you were in Pakistan, but now they're used at your university, which is a great honor. I would say that these are huge accomplishments. Um, and I'm so proud that,
Thank you.
wherever Pakistani women are making their name, I think it's a moment for all of us to be very proud. You uh, you also presented at one of their big conferences. They're like, research places where you had this 3-minute thesis that you gave. Can you kindly tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to tell you because it's something that I take pride on. So I'm the first Pakistani doctor of Australian origin to go into the PhD extra program at Deakin. So that was something beautiful. Also, last year I presented a few of my papers from my PhD project at different conferences. I got the best paper award at Singapore for the best paper presentation award there. So that was something good.
Oh,
Thank you. It's been a journey. Like every day, I feel like I'm learning something new. I started getting published from Monash, and then I'm already published from my PhD thesis here at Deakin. Because my PhD program is a thesis by publications, so it's a little bit tough because I'm working on different projects and I need to be published in international Q1 journals, like the high impact journals, before I actually submit my portfolio. So there's been a lot of pressure, but it's been an amazing journey, I would say. Also, you said, how was my experience at the university? Sorry.
The talk that you gave, the 3-minute talk.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
what was that about?
Yeah. So the 3-minute talk, that's called 3MT. That was something that I did last year. I was a finalist. I did it again this year. And I was lucky to be a finalist there. So there are different candidates who were selected from different schools. Like I was from the School of Health. There's people coming from School of Psychology, School of Nutrition. And then what we need to do is we need to represent our whole project, the thesis project, in under 3 minutes. And there's a huge panel of people, like all of my PhD colleagues, they were there, all the professors are there from public health, from clinical side. And once you've given the presentation, so I had to capture all of the essence of my project into those 3 minutes. So it's sort of like a mini TED talk. And the beauty of it is that you can't really prepare for that, because once I was done, then anybody from the audience can actually ask you any questions. Like that means anything. It could start from the clinical aspect of it, from the gynae and reproductive side. It could come for the research side, for the whole project administration, to the high risk ethics, and you've got to be on your toes. But I can tell you that, Farhan, once you do that, it's such a wonderful feeling, because you know that you have a robust project, you get more good advice as well. And it's something, it's almost like, feeling like a gladiator going into the arena on the academic front.
Yeah, I think that that teaches some, be able to be prepared but still be vulnerable. Because you could be asked anything, and thousands of eyes are on you. It's a difficult undertaking. So,
and I can tell you, Farhan, thank you. And there's one thing, like you said, there's no shame to say that I don't know that one particular answer to that question. It's okay to say that you don't know that, but you'll learn about it. Like you said, showing your vulnerability, it's difficult at times.
Right?
Yeah.
At times, and but I think that that actually is the strength with good public speakers and individuals. So my question, now we have talked a little bit about your career, where you see yourself in this field now going forward. So let's say, thankfully, so by soon you will be completing your PhD.
Yep.
What are you thinking about? Have you maybe you didn't have a chance yet, which is okay, because we were just talking about, like, how you started your journey, and the year where you were a what do we call, demonstrator in the school. That was your year to reflect on where you want to take your life, right? And so far,
absolutely,
it's been a struggle, but it's been ambitious achievements, and that's the life worth pursuing for, right?
Yeah.
If you were born with a silver spoon, you got everything. Now you achieved it. You can be proud of it, and you can tell your kids, look, your mom made it. Coming from Pakistan, for 11 schools changed before I started medical school. You can do it.
Yeah.
It's all good lessons. Again, we should share our struggles with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that sometimes when they fail in their life, they would know, my parents had struggles. They failed at times, but that's okay. So what I want to ask you is now, after completion of your PhD, 5 years from now, where are you looking? What do
Okay.
you want to do?
Well, I think the one thing I know about myself is that I definitely believe that the only constant in life is change. By default, it's been kind of, become the unconscious mantra. So I I haven't really thought about it. Like I'm kind of going with the flow at the moment and
Yeah.
just enjoying everything. Like I'm being active for research and from my work side. But I'd love to be a part of an organization. I'd love to be a part of a collaborative work, a huge project. The thing is, Farhan, during my PhD, I've been dealing with big data sets. So when I said it was a steep learning curve, so at the moment, I've been dealing with 17,000 patients data set from different countries. And at
70,000? Wow.
17,000. So I think for me, the huge thing to learn was how to do the quantitative statistical analysis in the quantitative research, handle the big data sets. Like you might have heard of demographic health surveys. They're conducted in different countries around the world, and how to get that meaningful information by doing your data analysis from those data sets. So that was a huge learning for me. And then I also did a bit of qualitative work last year. So I'm basically a mixed methods researcher at the moment. So that is sort of another step further. I'm not just a quantitative researcher or just a qual person. I am a mixed methods researcher, and I'm happy to conduct research
You can
either.
fit in any public health arena project,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a great asset to be. Now, my question is, I have one question about Pakistan. Public health awareness among physicians is a new topic. What was the situation for public to know their health? I feel like that one of the things that is lacks is doctors may know something, if not enough, maybe in 5 years.
Yeah.
What can we do for the public to know what things are important for us? Or for them, I'm sorry, for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We definitely need to brush up the public health skills, the research skills of doctors. But even more so, the important thing is to educate the public. We keep on talking about the medical aspect of it, but we definitely need to focus on the preventive side of things. And that's where your health literacy comes in, your medical health literacy. And I've always strongly believed in health education and behavioral change communication, which can happen through the literacy. Um, what we need to make sure is that, see, there's this whole formal education. Somebody can have education till year 10 or year 12, which should be enough technically for them to understand the gist of things, but it's not enough till you actually give them that health literacy. So to do that, we definitely need to have public health programs, which are incorporated into our major health programs as prevention programs, and then have them implemented, have a proper robust policy, and then have the evaluation. And those public health programs could actually, they don't need to be vertical programs. They need to be integrated with everything. So if you're talking about heart health, then you can definitely, educate the public about their basic hand washing and how to prevent themselves from different infectious diseases, and so on and so forth. So I think because you're mentioning it now, I've always felt that there has to be an amalgamation of different public health programs for the public. But then for the doctors, the clinicians, there has to be a separate program, which is not only about the prevention, it definitely incorporates the research side of things. Because you've got these big data sets, even from your clinic. I talked to my sister, she's a clinician, so she's a psychiatrist, and I keep telling her, you've got such a rich mine of data, but till the time you don't translate your clinical data into research output, we won't have enough evidence-based information based on which we can make our decisions, So we definitely need to generate more of that sort of segment in which clinicians are happy to conduct basic research, and they're happy and comfortable with collaboration work with other researchers.
Very thoughtful comments. I want to ask you one more follow-up question,
Yes.
which is about Pakistan's public health and your role as in women health. One thing
Yep.
that I would like you to maybe come back at a later time on this show and talk a little bit about importance of um, women's decision or awareness of pregnancy. We believe that it's a God's gift that a child is born, but there is also a human factor involved. That I feel like that in our country, I mean, we are not geographically a big country, but we are sixth largest country in the world, and our economy may be 65th in the world or even lower. I'm just quoting a number. I'm sorry, I don't have
Yes.
the correct numbers. But what I want to talk to you about is in the future to bring up those pain points that we need to empower our women to be a person who has a say in their home when they should have a kid, when they should have a pregnancy. Because that right now that doesn't happen. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
we need to know that we need to bring that awareness that women's body needs nourishment. It needs, like was telling me that women in Pakistan probably have the largest population of iron deficiency anemia, basic minerals. Women are not given that because they believe, oh, they work at home, their body doesn't need it, the men need it. But that has led to so much problems in women. And then eventually they get more ailments, physical, mental. I can't even imagine what the role of osteoporosis and vitamin D deficiency in Pakistan would be. So
Absolutely.
I think that your role would be very much appreciated because you are at that position where you still know a lot about Pakistan that people who left 20 years ago don't know, but you also have a very good open-minded exposure to Western worlds and cultures, and you can kind of bridge that gap for us and our public. And I think they may listen from you better than anyone else. So my question for you is a couple more questions, and I will wrap up this professional session. It's been very useful and enriching. What made you stronger or resilient? Maybe if you have a struggle to share, something that may help us know you.
That's a good question. So the first part that you were mentioning, I'd like to, sorry, touch on that first part that you were
Sure.
mentioning about the plight of women in Pakistan. And I would say not just Pakistan, all those low to middle income countries in Southeast Asia, especially, and in Africa. And you're absolutely right, because my public health career started in Pakistan. So I was already sensitized to all of those public health problems, especially in women's reproductive health. And everything that you've mentioned, that is the main, core of the problems for women, for their accessibility to healthcare and their reproductive health choices and all of that. One of my projects actually talks about this because we're talking about sustainable development goals. Sustainable development has been suggested by United Nations back in 2015. And as you know, for all the countries around the world, they are supposed to achieve some particular parameters, those 17 goals they call sustainable development goals, out of which, would you believe it, that in 2015, that was the first time when focused attention was given to the reproductive health of women and their accessibility to the idea of informed decisions for contraception use, for birth spacing, and for reducing unintended pregnancies. So in my head, I mean, I'm trying to think that it took us so long to actually put those main burning issues into universal
Speaking
healthcare
points.
goals.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm glad that we're now moving towards that thing, and we can actually have good policies in different countries. And now speaking for Pakistan, whatever the issues in Pakistan are, they are shared by other countries, especially Bangladesh and India, to more or less the same sort of problems. And we definitely need to have more robust public health programs, like the basic, how to reduce iron deficiency anemia. And then you said, how can women actually have more autonomy to make decisions about their reproductive bodies and to have birth spacing? That is a major issue. Pakistan is still predominantly a rural country. So we are talking about the problems faced by those 80% of the rural population, the women there, who end up having multitude of children, no birth spacing, and just a complete danger to their health, to the children's health, and all of that. Now, coming back to that, for the PhD, sorry, for the your question originally was to come
Uh,
back and
that I was asking that we would like to talk about those issues because they are
yeah,
so basic when we look at the Western
yeah,
world, but
yeah,
they are. My second question was about resilience.
yeah.
What made you resilient? Is there a
Okay, yeah,
moment of
okay.
that you look
Um,
back and you want to say, well, look, this is how hard it was.
yeah, okay. Right. So I think for all of us, the road to personal and professional journey, I would say it is fraught with different challenges. Um, and also, I'd like to say that we don't have just one obstacle at one time. It's never linear. It's always, happening at different times of your life. And for myself, I feel that I've evolved as a person. So maybe the problems that I was facing 10 years back might not be real issues for me now. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our colleagues and friends could identify it. I think you start having that emotional strength to deal with the problems. So I think for me, the first issue was when I was, actually mm, venturing into the public health field back in 2004-5. And because I come from a family of doctors, my aunts, my uncles, and I could see that I was kind of breaking some barriers. I have been the first person in my family who decided to go into research. So that was not really, I would say, an outright sort of hurdle, but definitely on a psychological level, I had to justify what I was doing at different levels. So it definitely had its pressure in the early years, when you're kind of testing the waters and you're starting your professional field. So that was one thing. Other than that, look, even doing your specialization, I think you have different hurdles. You can have your psychological hurdles. Mostly we are prisoners of our minds. So my take is that it's going to happen no matter what you're doing. If you are just a demonstrator starting out, or you're a specialist, or you're doing postgrad, or you're done with it and you're a clinician, I feel that you face small or big problems every day of your life. It's just the way you process it. So you asked me what made me resilient. I think the fact that I had to deal with so many different things at different times of my life, and it's not just my journey. Everybody would be having their own set of problems and issues. And I think the way you deal with that, my mantra has always been, that the best way out is to go through. Let I let the problem wash through me. You have to acknowledge there's a problem. That's the first step that we're not taught, actually. If you think about it, never in our schooling or even in our med school, mindfulness was never a big part of anything. And to be able to recognize that there's a problem and to openly discuss it or even acknowledge it to yourself. So once you start doing that, I think you can start crossing different barriers, and you can just, you become more resilient. You know how to deal with the problem. You acknowledge there is a problem, and then you just, try to solve it.
Wonderful. So I'm going to summarize the two things that I got out of your description. One was the resilience came with facing and be ready for the change. As you said earlier, change is the only constant,
Yep.
which we hear about it, but seeing in your life has actually uh, reciprocated in that reality. The other thing is being present and being practicing mindfulness, the presence of feeling now and facing it right on, letting it hit you and just sink in, I think that's wonderful. And that is, mindfulness is something that we are not talking about it. But I agree. Growing up until I was 40 years old, I had never thought that this is something that we need to work on. So that was
Yeah.
very, very useful. My last question for the professional part is, do you have a book that you read or recommend reading for our viewers?
Oh gosh, look, Farhan, I love reading different books across different genres. Um, if I may, I'd like to recommend 3 or 4 books. They come from different genres, but all of those books have actually made an impact on me as a person. And I just evolved, because of that. So the first one would be, I would say, it's by Jonas Johanson. It's called The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden. It's sort of like a political satire, and it was beautifully written.
The girl,
This
the girl,
the girl who saved the king of Sweden.
King of
It's by
Sweden.
Sweden. Yeah, it's by Jonas Johansson.
Okay.
Um, uh, Very different to what I usually read because I'm a big science fiction fan. But I think there are times when I'd like to, go for different genres of books.
Yeah.
The other one is a classic. That's called To Kill a Mockingbird by Lee Harper. The
Hmm.
all-time beautiful classic that made an impact. It was beautifully written. Um, and then I've always had a love for science fiction books, so I would definitely recommend I, Robot by Isaac Asimov.
I Robot.
Uh,
Okay.
I, Robot, yeah.
I'm ashamed to say that I've not
Oh,
read
that's the
it.
look. Honestly, Farhan, I had to tell my husband about these, and poor guy, he started reading those books,
Yeah.
just so we could talk about it. But yeah, these are Isaac Asimov's. Some of the books have actually been made into movies. There was a movie by Will Smith for I, Robot actually some years back,
I
which is
heard about
pretty
that.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. And I'm gonna add another one last book
Yeah.
which I would definitely recommend to all our friends and colleagues. That's called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield.
Oh, Astronaut's Guide to Life
To
on Earth.
Life on Earth. And this guy, by Chris Hadfield, he was a Canadian astronaut. And the way this guy has written this book, I felt like I was, dealing with the challenges in my life and how I was overcoming the different obstacles. It's beautiful, beautifully written.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I would request you to text me later on. I tried to write it down so that I can post it on our link on
Sure.
YouTube. So that concludes our professional session. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you.